Good evening. My name is Trevor Murray, and I am the chaplain at Good Samaritan Hospital in Vincennes, Indiana. It is my great pleasure and honor to lead you in reflection and prayer this evening on behalf of the entire original company listening area, and in particular, on behalf of our healthcare workers. We begin this evening with the words of Isaiah the prophet, written hundreds of years before the birth of Jesus Christ. They are taken from the 60th chapter of that book, beginning with the first two verses and ending with the 18th and 19th. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has dawned upon you. For behold, darkness covers the land, deep gloom enshrouds the peoples. But over you the Lord will rise, and his glory will appear before you. Violence will no more be heard in your land, ruin or destruction within your borders. You will call your walls salvation, and all your portals praise. The sun will no more be your light by day. By night you will not need the brightness of the moon. The Lord will be your everlasting light, and your God will be your glory. I encountered this text earlier this week while in prayer, and it struck me. How could something written so long ago describe this year so accurately? I'm thinking not so much of the words, "The glory of the Lord has dawned upon you," but more, "Behold, darkness covers the land, and deep gloom enshrouds the peoples." The symbol for 2020 has become a dumpster fire, and it's immortalized for posterity in a Christmas ornament that can be hung sarcastically on your tree for years to come. And yes, I'm aware that a dumpster fire might be viewed as a light in our darkness, just not a very good one. Back in April, I composed a message to be read on these same radio stations. We gathered around our radios to pray together. Many of us were in our vehicles in observance of a new reality known as social distancing, and sat facing Good Samaritan Hospital to show our support. I was there too, sitting in my car, listening to my own voice, surrounded by a few other cars doing the same. I later realized I was in the wrong parking lot, and everyone else was on the other side of the building. I was glad there were some more people gathered on that side. I remember sitting there looking up at the glass monolith before me, thinking about and praying for some nurses, therapists, techs, and doctors I knew by name busy at work inside. We were bracing for a surge we were told was to come. We had strategized, planned, and prepared, and we were waiting. In a few days, when this message will be aired, I will first of all be sitting on the correct side of the building. And secondly, when I look at the hospital, I will do so with different eyes. Eyes that are much more tired. Eyes that will look specifically to the second and third floors where COVID-19 patients are our guests. I will be thinking of and praying for a much longer list of nurses, therapists, techs, and doctors whom I know not only by name, but with whom I have become, for lack of a better term, a blood brother, bound together in blood, sweat, and literal tears. On ICU, where I have spent the last few months leading patients' families to their loved ones' rooms for window visits, I can tell you who is on his or her day off. I can tell you who hasn't had a day off in a long time. And I can direct you where to go if you need buttons sewn on your head covering so you can hook that dreaded elastic from a surgical mask on those instead of cutting into the tops of your earlobes. We have spent a lot of time together. We have had our hearts broken when patients for whom we have cared for weeks on end eventually lose their long fight to COVID. We have talked about our sense of helplessness as even our young and recovering patients among us suddenly die, leaving behind spouses and children. The surge is now here. and is no longer a bridge to be crossed when we come to it. We're on the bridge, and it is burning, right next to the dumpster. So darkness covers the land, indeed. Yet to give Isaiah's text justice, we must read on. But over you the Lord will rise, and his glory will appear before you. When? How? It's not clear that the writers of Isaiah knew this, but history reveals that the struggles of both the 8th and the 6th centuries BCE, when it is thought that Isaiah would have been written, eventually came to pass. Assyrians and Babylonians ceased to be a threat and eventually to even exist as nations, while God's chosen people are still with us to this day. And it is to this chosen people that a new hope would eventually dawn through a child born into the poorest of conditions to a family who would eventually become political refugees. It wasn't the hope that was expected, but it was exactly the hope that was needed. There is a reason why Christmas is celebrated in December. It's not because Jesus' birthday is on the 25th. It was originally moved to that date to give a new significance to the winter solstice. On one of the darkest nights of the year, the light of the world is born. When hope seems the most hopeless, hope is made incarnate. It seems to be God's way of handling things. God could have chosen to heal the human condition through thoughts and prayers, but instead he chose to become flesh, to get his hands dirty, if you will, to feel human love and hatred, to be adored and rejected, namely, to sacrifice. Thus, we came to understand love in a different light. So it's up to us to apply what we have learned. We have gathered this evening to shower our healthcare workers with thoughts, prayers, and appreciation. But our love needs to take flesh. It needs to be transformed from contemplation into action. Do you want to help our healthcare system? Stay home. If you can't stay home, wear a mask. Show our nurses, therapists, techs, and doctors that you love them by lightening their load. Make the sacrifices that prove your love by limiting your travel and even sacrificing time with your loved ones in order to protect them and yourselves, even when you are looking forward to being with them most at the holidays. These are hard decisions to make. But this pandemic has shown us that some decisions can't be taken back. There will come a time when we will no longer need to make these sacrifices, but we are not there yet. In the meantime, let us set our sights on those days to bolster our hopes, but also to shift our perspective. Perhaps instead of wondering how we will get through this, we might wonder how history will look upon our response. Were we angered to forfeit some personal freedoms, or did we see the opportunities inherent to adversity? Have we grown at all through this pandemic, or is our faith in God and or in humanity yet another fatality to this year's dumpster fire? History shows us that a faith that is kept is enriched in time and in adversity. May history judge us with understanding, and may God be even more merciful. But let's give them both a reason to do so. An end to this pandemic is in sight, with vaccines heading our way. But before they get here and take effect, there is still a lot of loving to do. For God's sake and for our own, may we have the strength to rise to this momentous occasion. May God bless us all and bring to completion the good work begun in us. May God also bless us with a Merry Christmas.